Good afternoon, Bison fans, and welcome to our Bucknell Women's Rowing Virtual Season Preview Show. My name is Todd Newcomb. I want to thank you for joining us today, and I want to thank Giant as our sponsor for today's event. Giant's been a great partner of Bison Athletics, and we thank them for all that they do for Bison athletes here at Bucknell. We've got a great lineup for you today, featuring head coach Steve Kish and three members of the current rowing team, Olivia Zarrell, Cobb, and Kasha Schubert. Time now to welcome in the head coach of the Bison, Steve Kish. Thanks for joining us today, Coach.
Thanks, Todd. This is great. Great to be here.
Steve's a 1992 Bucknell graduate and is one of the veterans in our department and is currently in his 25th year as a head coach of the women's rowing program. His tenure has included 7 consecutive Patriot League titles from 2006 to 2012, 3 ECAC Metro Championships, 34 Dad Vale Regatta medals, 6 top 2 overall team finishes at the Dad Vale Regatta, and the first national title in school history at the 2007 IRA Lightweight National Championship. In addition, Steve has been named the Patriot League Coach of the Year 6 different times. Coach, we'd like to set the stage today with some questions about your program's return to competition. And obviously, to get to this point, there's been extensive preparation and planning from a safety standpoint. Can you describe what some of the new protocols are that you and your student athletes have to go through on a daily basis in order to be able to even train and compete?
Sure. So when it comes to being on the river, the fall was a little bit different than the spring. The fall, we were keeping people in groups of 2. So you were only rowing in a 2-person boat to limit exposure. As things have developed and we've gotten better at all the different protocols, this spring we're able to move to boats of 8. And those boats of 8 and 4 are staying together as a pod, so they don't change from week to week. Once we get our testing from Wednesday, we then have the chance to maybe make some changes to those lineups. So the first thing is podding. Secondly, obviously, we're cleaning everything a little bit more than usual. We usually clean our handles once a day. Now we're doing it twice a day. We're also just masking everywhere we go, even though we're outside on the water. The first time that we're going to be able to take off the mask is going to be probably during race time. So the women that we just saw here on the preview before we started, it's the first time I get to see their faces in a long time. But yeah, a lot of masks and a lot of cleaning and a lot of keeping pods consistent from week to week.
From a conference standpoint and an administrative standpoint, there obviously have been many discussions in terms of trying to figure out what the championship would look like, what your schedule this spring is going to look like. Have you had much input with the other Patriot League coaches in terms of how that all turned out?
Yeah, it's a really tight-knit bunch. So we've been in touch since we shut down back in March, April when the season ended. And again, it's a close-knit set of coaches. So we've been working, plotting, planning, strategizing ever since then. Rowing has some advantages in the sense that we're not grappling like a wrestler or boxing out like a basketball player. So we keep our distance from our competitors. So that's a big advantage. So yeah, the league has been in really strong touch. We're going to face 2 or 3 of our league opponents during the season. And then the hope is we're going to see everyone at the league championship. It's a full field championship on May 14th, about 10 weeks from now.
And I'm assuming among the coaching ranks in the rowing community, you guys are all prepared in case you need to pivot competition. Things can change from day to day, and we've all seen what pauses do and what they bring about. But if there's a pivot opportunity because of school testing or a positive somewhere, are you guys ready to switch opponents? Or I guess everything's pretty fluid.
Well, again, we sort of pre-pivoted. So typically our spring races would be larger events with 6, 12, 24 teams, and you're going to race like you're in a swimming pool with 6 boats across with buoys between you. And those kind of regattas have been shut down except for a few in the southern part of the country. So we pivoted, and instead of traveling, 5, 6 times during the season, we're actually staying home, and we've invited teams. We're in a really good location, so we've invited 9 different teams to come for 9 consecutive different weekends. So it'll be head-to-head style racing, which is sort of along the old style, like the Harvard-Yale race or the Oxford-Cambridge race. It's a very personal event where it's one-on-one. So you're either obviously winning or losing. versus when you're in a field of 6 or 12 or 24, you might be, ahead of someone and behind a few, or ahead of a bunch, but behind one. The one-on-one racing is really unique. So we pivoted. We're lucky we have a great place here. If anything, it might be a silver lining for the future. We've typically stayed away from racing at home, but we're sort of going all in to having these home events in time. Maybe it's in May, maybe it's next fall or next spring, but I think our home events might be something where we can bring out a fan base and have some more folks along the river. Where we are at our boathouse, right across the river, we have a beautiful river walk that's relatively new. And it runs essentially 2,000 meters and even has a grandstand built into it. So we're going to start using that and seeing what we can do.
I think it's a great opportunity for people in the Bucknell community to come down and see what the rowing program can do, and look forward to that in this spring. How much of a challenge, Coach, has it been from both a physical and mental standpoint for your student athletes to make the sacrifices they've made in order to compete during this pandemic?
Well, I think for everyone, it's comes in waves. It's not at the same point for everyone. And with a group of 50 and soon enough 75 women, again, your tougher days are not going to necessarily coincide with each other. So it's relatively constant, relatively constant that someone's having a really tough time with the situation, whether it's school, whether it's personal, whether it's even the rowing side or the training side. But it's been a really resilient group. Couldn't be prouder of the way they've progressed since we left campus back in March. And they spent a lot of time over the winter break together because we were able to, based on our playing and practice season. And they've stayed pretty tight and got some good momentum moving into the season. But it's been tough. It's definitely been tough. And we've had some folks that have had to take a little bit of time away, but also folks that have been able to bounce back and return. So again, it's a mix.
So we were talking prior to coming on the air, 5 days on the river now. So what's the schedule like for the program right now in terms of river practice, weight room activity, and activity on the ergs?
Yeah, with the class schedules moving to an 8:30 a.m. start, it really lucked out for us. So now we can leave campus at 6:20, be back in time for 9:30 class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, be back for 8:30 class on Tuesday, Thursday. Saturday, we were practicing, but now we'll be racing on Saturdays. So 5 days a week, we're on the water in the morning, a little bit chilly sometimes. And then Tuesday, Thursday, they're in the weight room in the afternoon. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they're either on the erg or in the weight room. So it's full tilt right now. Luckily, Saturday is not a travel day to go somewhere, which takes a lot of time and sometimes energy. So we're going to get to sleep in on Saturday, be prepped for our Saturday afternoon race, and not lose a lot of time to travel when it comes to academics. So again, a few silver linings, but it's a pretty intense schedule. We've got 10 weeks till Patriots, 11 till graduation, 12 till NCAAs. So it's a short window, but it's going to be fun.
It always amazes me how quickly the spring semester seems to go. I swear it goes faster every year. With a roster of 50 plus women, Coach, how do you maintain the group and keep them connected and keep everybody on the same page?
That's a really good question for the women on the team. We definitely provide the foundation and the structure, but in the end, it comes down to our seniors and our class leaders and the stuff that they do behind the scenes, the gatherings they have online for the past 20 weeks, the shout outs they give each other, the time they spend together in the weight room versus being in a boat. They get to have 20 and later on 50 women in the weight room at once. So that, I guess, cohesion, unity, camaraderie comes from the shared suffering, right? The early mornings, the ice on their oars, the tough workouts, and the time in the weight room. But again, we do our best on Zoom and we do our best with connecting the dots, but they're responsible and do a great job of it.
So I'm gonna put this one out there for the novice folks that might be watching the program and don't know a lot about rowing in the rowing world. Can you explain the difference between the varsity and the novice programs, and also the different boats that you use? For example, the 4, the 8, and so on.
Yeah. So rowing has a rich history of athletes coming to college, whether it's the old stories you hear about the 1936 Olympics, the boys in the boat out at University of Washington, whether it's national champion women or even the past 3 Olympic women's eights. There's a rich history of athletes coming to college and starting rowing for the first time as a college rower. And that would be a novice rower. So we have a group of 38 novices right now that are trying out. We'll bring it down to about 25 in the next few days. And Olivia was actually a novice 3.5 years ago. But the novice program, and Emily Gabriel, one of our assistant coaches, started here as a novice as well. So the novice program, I started here as a novice, is really important to us. Everyone is on the varsity team, but if you talk about the experienced group right now, you would sort of call them the varsity squad. Those are the women that either rowed last year as a novice or they came in from high school with experience. So we have women that have rowed since 6th and 7th grade, as well as since 8th and 9th grade, et cetera. Typically a class of 10 to 20 women come in with experience. And then, like I said, a big group of novices give it a whirl. We row the 8-person boat in competition, just like in the Olympics. That's the priority boat. But we're also going to train in the 1-person and 2-person boat, which requires a lot of skill, gives you a lot of boat feel and water feeling. And that's the same as what the Olympians and the national teams across the world are doing, is they spend a lot of time in small boats first and then build into the bigger boat after that. So you take your individual speed and create a collective unit later in the season.
So you mentioned already how the program's pivoted with the scheduling and how the races are going to be different and more one-on-one competition. How does that change things from a coaching standpoint for you? I guess it's almost easier to keep track of. Explain what you think that difference is going to be like.
Well, it's a great question. There's a lot of angles to it. So when you row head to head, the coaches are going to be able to follow the race all the way down the course in the motorboats. You're going to get to see it happen and unfold. Versus when you're at a large regatta with 6 boats across and heats and finals for everyone, coaches are on shore. They're on their bike, but they're not up close. They can't see as specific of what's going on as closely. So that'll be a great piece for the coaches. For the athletes, it might be a good question for them as well. But it's a very personal style of competition, because it's not 1 versus 5 more where you can be ahead of a few. It's one-on-one, so you're either ahead or behind. So it's again, very intimate, very personal, and I think a little bit more intense than the larger regattas. I think that's the best I can tell you.
That totally makes sense. So I've got one final question for you today, Coach, and it's from one of our viewers, and it's from Jenny, who's in Brooklyn, New York, and she wants to know, what can alumni do to support you better?
Well, once we can have fans, obviously we want to have you back here on campus, and you guys do a great job coming to our events away from home. Our alumni events are always awesome. The 35th anniversary had 50 women show up and race on the Schuylkill River. Our 40th anniversary is coming up soon, so we want to generate a big crowd and excitement for that. But I would say if you felt like writing a handwritten letter to some women on our team, just to share that you're there with them in spirit and pulling for them from a distance, I think that would go a long way. Of course, donations are great, but donations of time and love and support are probably going to have a huge impact as well.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Coach. We're all looking forward to the time when we can revisit those events and have those great events back here on campus or wherever you may be competing. They really add so much to the program. It's great for the current athletes to have that kind of support. Thank you for your time today, Coach, and we wish you the best of luck this weekend and down the stretch this spring.
While I'm saying goodbye, I just want to let the women that graduated last year that didn't get to race, the class of 2020, let them know that we're pulling for them every day. We're racing in their honor, and we'll be thinking about them for these next 10 weeks.
Sounds great, Coach. Thank you so much. All right, time now to welcome our 3 current student athletes to the program. Our first guest is senior Olivia Zarrell, who is from Arlington, Virginia, where she attended Yorktown High School. Thanks for joining us today, Olivia.
Thank you for having me.
So can you start off by telling us how you chose to attend Bucknell University?
So I was a novice rower, so I did not come here for rowing. I was looking for a geography program at a liberal arts university, and I had heard about Bucknell before, and I visited it, stuck with me. It felt like home from the get-go.
It's a very common theme that we seem to hear is once somebody gets to campus and sees the campus, they're sold. So we're glad that you decided to come to campus and stay here at Bucknell. It's been a long time since you and your teammates have had the opportunity to compete. How excited are you all to get back on the water and take on George Mason this weekend?
I think everyone is very excited. Having a fall with no regattas and ultimately a spring with no regattas, it's been feeling like we're training for a little bit of nothing. So I think it's excited to like finally get back there and see another team and see how we are progressing compared to other boats out there.
And we just had a discussion with a coach. You're going to have 9 home races this year, which has to be the most that I can ever remember. What's that going to be like for you guys? And do you feel like that'll be is it a home track advantage, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely is a little bit. We practice on this water 6 days a week. We know what the water's like in the worst conditions and the best conditions. So I think it will definitely be a home advantage to a certain extent. The downfall is that we don't get to practice on the Cooper River where Patriot Leagues will be taking place, but I think it will be good to get some strokes in against anyone that is willing to take strokes against us. So.
And you mentioned you were a novice rower, and Coach mentioned right now the young ladies are trying out in that category. There's about 38 trying out. Can you take us back to your experience and what that was like when you went through that?
Yeah. So I kind of came to Bucknell. I was a competitive athlete my entire life. And I came to Bucknell kind of missing that sense of team and something to get my competitive spirit out. So I joined novice, the novice program, and it was pretty rigorous at first. The learning curve is quite steep. Everyone can attest to that, is learning how to just be on an erg, then be in a boat is a lot. But it was so great. We got to bond as a group, and then eventually by the end of the season, work fully into the varsity team and get to race in a regatta and be a part of the group that I never thought I was going to be a part of and compete in collegiate athletics, which is huge.
Now, what sports did you compete in before you came to Bucknell and got into the rowing?
I was actually a gymnast. So I did gymnastics for 16 years before stopping and then coming to Bucknell and joining rowing.
So a little birdie told me you're about 6 feet tall. Is that right?
Yes, I'm 5'11".
How does that affect a rower, the height and makeup of somebody? How does that affect you in a boat in that type of situation?
We have rowers of all heights on our team, but being tall definitely has its advantages. I have a longer stroke, which tends to be faster, move more water as it goes. And it also means what positions I get put in the boat are usually pretty specific. I'm towards the middle because I am one of the larger athletes on the team. I can't really fit in some of the smaller seats in the back.
Yeah, I'm about Coach Kish's height. I don't know how I would fit in the boat either. So you mentioned that, you went through the novice situation and you've obviously matured over the 4 years you've been here.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, tell us how that's gone for you, how you've grown as a rower. And secondly, what advice would you have for some of the women who are entering the novice program now?
Yeah, I've definitely grown. I've become a better athlete physically and mentally. I've learned how to be in the sport of rowing and learn how to take criticism through practices and regattas and learn from my mistakes. And my advice to the freshmen or the first years that are coming in now is just take it day at a time and take in everything that you can get. One day you get one correction, try to make that correction every single day and try to enjoy it while you are learning, because it's really fun.
So I also have a question for you from one of our viewers, and it also happens to be from Jenny in Brooklyn. She had many good questions. She wants to know, how did you and the team stay motivated and mentally healthy all winter in this very unique year?
Yeah. Feeling motivated was hoping that we were going to have a season, definitely, and motivating each other. We had lots of communication through social media and text messages, going back and forth, posting about our workouts that we were doing when we were apart, and then when we were together, having workout partners to train with on campus, to try to stay motivated and think of what could this season become if we could have a regular season. So keeping that always in hindsight.
All right. Well, my last question for you is about your future. Can you tell us what you've been studying here at Bucknell, and maybe if have any postgraduate plans at this point?
Yeah, I'm a geography major here at Bucknell with an international relations minor. The future is still being worked on at the moment. I'm hoping to get a job in the field of geography with GIS analysts or in urban planning. So still stay tuned to see where I go with that.
There's absolutely no rush. Don't feel any of that pressure. I want to thank you so much, Olivia, for your time today, and I wish you and your teammates the best of luck in the spring.
Thank you.
All right, so our next guest today is senior Caitlin Cobb, who's from Warwick, Maryland, where she attended St. Andrew's School and raced in the Varsity 8 as both a junior and senior. Welcome, Caitlin. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So can you share your recruiting story and how you ultimately chose Bucknell as a spot to continue your academic and athletic career?
Yeah, so in high school, I got recruited for swimming, cross country, and rowing. And I had decided that I wanted to major in biomedical engineering. And so I was looking at the different schools and I found Bucknell. And I loved I met the coaches and I enjoyed the vibe of the team. And Bucknell had a really outstanding biomedical engineering program that, and the vibe of the school when I came on campus and toured was really great. And so that's how I ended up here.
Well, I'm sure Coach Kish and the rowing program is very happy that you chose the Bison. Talk to us about the training the team does. So it's a 2,000 meter race, 1.24 miles. What's your training like? And while you were at home for 10 weeks over the long winter break between semesters, what did you do then to train? And what do you think it's going to look like leading up to the Patriot League Championships in the next 10 weeks?
So we're training for the 2K race, like a head race, not head race, sprint. So we do a lot of cardio and weightlifting to prepare our bodies for that rigorous race. My preparation over the winter, I'm lucky enough to have a erg machine at home. So I spent a lot of time in the basement erging. I would disappear from my family for about 2 hours every day or so and go erg. I also was able to like run outside when it was warm enough, but a lot of erging. And then what was your other question? Sorry.
Just about the preparation in terms of what it was like between the 2 semesters while you were away for so long. How did you train then versus now, how you're training leading into the championship?
So definitely I'm enjoying training on campus a lot more because I'm with my team. And then also we're getting on the water 5 days a week, as Kish said, and racing on Saturdays. And I mean, I love the sport, especially because we're on the water and I'm in a boat with other teammates, and it's beautiful in the water, and it's just being in the boat is so much different and better than being on an erg, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. So I know you were in the first Varsity 4. Is that the boat you're in again this year? What boat are you competing in? And after you tell me that, I'm going to ask you to put your head coaching hat on and give me the best scouting report about your boat and the people in it.
So I haven't been voted yet, but so my sophomore year, I was in the Varsity 4 and I was a stroke of that. We had a senior graduate from that boat, but the other 3 women, including myself, are still on the team. But for the varsity boats that I'll be in, maybe the Varsity 4 or the 2V or the V8, we have a strong set of women that we have, of all years. I think we're gonna do great. I think we're all working really hard together and really pushing through.
So 3 years in the program now, what have been some of your most rewarding experiences you've had? And what are some of the skills that you think you've learned that you'll take with you once you leave the Bucknell bubble?
Sorry, what was the first part of the question?
So what are some of the most rewarding experiences you've had as part of the rowing program?
Definitely growing as an athlete and a person. And I would even say as a student, because we have to really manage our time and be deliberate on how we spend it. Some of the best experiences that I've had is it's all been really rewarding. I mean, there's been times when it's like hard, you know, but really at the end of the day, when, you know, I'm getting faster and my teammates are getting faster, and, you know, we get off the water, we had a great practice, you know, we grab food together. It's just, we're all, you know, part of a family, you know, we all have each other's backs, you know, yeah. And then.
Okay. Well, I've got another question here from the viewing audience. It's from Perry right here in Lewisburg. And she says, can you talk about the communication that goes on in a boat during a race? And how important is the coxswain to the success a boat can have?
Yeah. So the coxswain is critical to our racing. She's doing the steering and making the calls. So the athletes during the race aren't really talking. We're listening to our coxswain, and she's making, as I said, the calls, and that's like right off the start, like sprint calls, like building it up, and like the sprint, and then like settling it down to more of a like sustainable pace for the, and then making different moves and throughout the race, like against other boats. And she's talking us through the race since we're keeping our head in the boat. And she's telling us where we are and how we are doing against other boats. And she's also communicating with our stroke seat, and the stroke seat is setting the like tempo for the boat, and we're all following stroke seat. So she makes sure, the coxswain makes sure that we're all working together and performing our best.
Obviously, we don't want to rush your time here. You've only got this semester left. It's amazing how fast it goes. But have you started thinking about the future yet and post-graduation?
Yeah. So I have accepted a job with Johnson & Johnson. So I'm very excited for that.
Wow, congratulations. That's a little bit off your plate. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate the time that you took out to join us, and we wish you the best of luck against George Mason and throughout the spring.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right. Our final guest today is senior Kasha Schubert from Chanhassen, Minnesota. Sarah attended Chanhassen High School and rowed for the Twin Cities Youth Rowing Program. Welcome to the show, Kasha.
Hi, nice to be here.
All right. Can you share with us your recruiting story and tell us what ultimately led you to decide on Bucknell and become a member of the women's rowing program?
Yeah, for sure. So I was deciding between a couple different schools. I didn't apply to every school that had a rowing program that I was interested in. I was definitely looking more for a higher level engineering program over like a good team or something like that. That was my priority there. But Bucknell fit both of those. When I came to visit, I felt really welcomed by the team. The campus is gorgeous. The mechanical engineering program is great. I just really felt a good connection with the team and like I belong here. So I decided to accept, and I chose Bucknell over the other ones, and I'm really glad that I did.
Well, we're glad as well. And I gather, being from Minnesota, you're used to the cold, but during the cold days on the river, those early mornings, can you talk about what you guys wear or what you do to keep yourselves warm, but at the same time allows you to get maximum motion for your stroke technique?
Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely hard to master the art of layering, as we've come to call it, because you're right, it is really hard to keep yourself warm while also being able to move around in the way that you need to push the boat. So I usually go for more tight-fitted clothing just because we're on like a moving seat. It could get caught in the seat and other parts of the boat. So we generally have to wear something that's not super baggy. A lot of times we'll do 2 pairs of leggings on the bottom, 2 like Under Armour shirts on top. There's a lot of vest wearing. Ear gear is really important because you lose a lot of your heat through your head. I think vests are definitely like one of my favorite wintertime wears, because your arms are free, you know, you can keep moving and rowing pretty well, but it keeps your core warm. So it's definitely a highly recommended thing to the new novices if they end up rowing out in the cold.
I heard yesterday was a bit cold. There might have been some ice involved on the boats at the end of the day.
Yeah, so there's definitely splashing in the boats. I had one of my teammates behind me. She was actually, her entire oar was just covered in ice. So I ended up splashing it and then it would freeze. I felt really bad, but it is very common to just be covered in ice after practice.
Well, it's going to warm up, so we're going to stay in the positive there with the weather. So you're one of the senior leaders in the program at this point in your career. Can you share with us maybe a name or two of a past women's rower here at Bucknell that you looked up to while they were an upperclassman, and what types of things that they did that you now have taken on as characteristics as a leader yourself?
That's kind of a tough question, but definitely a good one. There were quite a few women a couple years ago that I really looked up to. One of them is actually one of our assistant coaches right now. Her name is Gabriel. She was a novice walk-on her freshman year, but she always brought so much positivity and energy, and like she was like a welcoming community just as a person. So I always really enjoyed her presence, and she always pushed people to do their best without trying to put anyone down or making it more competitive than it needed to be. So I always just felt really encouraged and inspired by her every day. So.
Well, if you think that was a tough question,
Oh no.
now I'm going to ask you to maybe give me a name or two of somebody on the current team that you really admire and why.
I think this one's actually a little bit easier. There was definitely a name that came up immediately. Casey Miller, she's a senior on the team as well. She was part of my recruiting class. So of course we've been close throughout the 4 years. She's small, but she's crazy fast and super dedicated. She pulls harder than I do, and I'm almost twice her size. She's very dedicated and a super great presence to have, very competitive, motivated, and definitely great at encouraging others to be motivated too.
Well, I mean, it's certainly no secret this past year has been tough on everybody. The pandemic has been a challenge across the board for folks. And what are some of the things maybe that you think you might have learned throughout the pandemic that you might look at as silver linings that you can take away to a post-pandemic world?
Right. So the pandemic was definitely hard. But you know, it gave us a lot of time to spend with our families. I spent a lot of time with my dog. I thought that was really great. And in some ways it's been easier for other things with classes. Like if I, like with some of my schedules, it's easier to just go to an online class after practice rather than going in person. So some of those things are like silver linings and make it a little bit easier during the semester. I've also found that my communication over Zoom and like connection skills have definitely increased because they've had to. You know, I've only been interacting with people over Zoom, and it's definitely been helpful for me to be able to navigate that and get better at that as it becomes more integral into the next part of our world moving forward.
Well, just as we've done with the other guests on the show, we've got a question from our viewer audience for you as well. And you might recognize this guy. His name is Bill, and he's from Minnesota. And he wants to know, by how many boat lengths do you expect to beat Navy?
Oh, no. So Bill is my father. He has very high hopes for us as a team, which we love and appreciate. We definitely hope to crush Navy. Our group chat at the moment is called Beat Navy 2020-2021. So we're really trying to find encouragement everywhere we go. I mean, hopefully it's open water, maybe like 3 boat lengths. I think we could do it. You know, we'll just leave Navy at the start line. Hopefully we do have a really good race with them where we maintain contact and still pull ahead. I don't know if we'll have open water on them, but obviously we're going to try. So.
Well, somehow something tells me no matter what, if you beat them, you will be more than very satisfied.
Yeah, for sure. We've been going after Navy for a while.
So finally, same as I've done with our other women on the call, tell us what your major is here at Bucknell and what plans you might have post-graduation.
So I'm a mechanical engineering major, also a very intense major, but I really enjoy it. I like the physics and the math. I've applied to graduate school and I was accepted into the Colorado School of Mines. They have a really great renewable and energy program, which is what I'm interested in and hope to work with. So it's looking like a really good option for me going forward. I haven't accepted it yet, but it's looking like a pretty good option. So.
It's a beautiful part of the country to be in as well. So congratulations on that if you decide to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again for being here today. And, you know, George Mason's right around the corner at first competition. We wish you luck with that. And it's going to be exciting to have you guys so close to campus for 9 actual competitions this year. So hopefully a bunch of us can get down there and cheer on the Bison. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we're really excited.
All right. Thank you. So that's a special thanks to our guests today. We appreciate all their time. That just wraps up today's show. We want to thank Jeffrey Campbell, John Terry, and Jess O'Shaughnessy for all their help with today's event. Our next event in our season preview series sponsored by Giant will be next Tuesday, March 16th at noon, and it will feature the women's golf program. We want to thank you all for tuning in today, and go Bison.